Hi sweeties, how are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, sweetheart, kindly smash that subscribe button, turn your notifications so you are notified each time I upload. And please give this video a thumb up. I appreciate you all so much, and I am saying a very big shout out to every one of you for all the love and support you all give me here. I am truly grateful. Thank you so much, and you are super sweet. So before we get into this video, a Chinese American man thinks he is grown to come out to call black people uneducated, right? Because like he really sounds white supremacist, like, he sounds white, like, that kind of thing. And he started for the uneducated people out there who still believe that the white Americans and the Europeans are responsible for all the slavery in the world. And then he went further to say that I am ready for the new barrage of racial hate. I mean, racial hate from who? Anyways, let's get that aside. I mean, he thinks he is white enough to come out to gaslight himself, not black people. Right? So why do they always come out to make people think that, yeah, slavery was already in existence? So don't think the white American slavery or the European slavery was a bad thing, like, because there was slavery already. Shadows, like, when we talk about this slavery, like, we'll talk about shadow slavery and transatlantic slave trade, right? Slavery is just a different thing. Shadow slavery, transatlantic slavery are just on their own. I mean, he thinks black people are not supposed to talk about all this because, like, slavery has always been there. And then the video he pushed forward to us to look at it, because for him, he has a point. And then it happens that Candace Owen was the one talking, like when Columbus discovered America. Wait, I thought people were already there before Columbus said he discovered America. They actually lost me there. And she went further to say that your ancestors actually were the ones that sold you out. And that, you know what? I'm just going to roll this clip. We'll come back to talk about it. And I absolutely want to read all your comments. Let me know what you all think in the comments.
For all the uneducated people out there who still believe that white Americans and Europeans are responsible for all of the slavery in this world, here's a crash course on the subject of slavery that you should watch.
Slavery was not invented by white people. It did not start in 1619 when the first slaves came to Jamestown. It existed before then. It did not start in 1492 when Columbus discovered the New World. In fact, when the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner. Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East.
What did she mean by serve them for dinner? I didn't know this. That's crazy.
Slavery existed in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe. Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century and later by the Ottoman Turks. Slavery existed when the Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean and most of Europe from the 1st through the 5th centuries. Slavery existed when Alexander the Great conquered Persia in the 4th century BC. It was so common that Aristotle simply considered it natural. The slave master model was just how the world operated in the great philosopher's day. Slavery existed during the time of the ancient Egyptians 5,000 years ago. As far back as we can go in human history, we find slavery. As renowned historian John Steele Gordon notes from time immemorial, slaves were a major item of commerce. As much as a third of the population of the ancient world was enslaved. Here's the second thing you need to know. White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery. In 1833, Britain was the first country in the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly...
I'm only saying about the Egyptian part back then because they had people out there building
building stuff.
And walking around carrying the
So is that what she's trying to say? Like the Egyptians, the one that started,
and they, like you watch them back.
Yeah. So is that what she's trying to say? Who started it? Was
I
that
don't know if
Egyptians?
she's trying to say that's who started, but I know that's basically she's saying like it just didn't come for the blacks.
Yeah. And didn't she?
And whites didn't
start it.
Something like
I didn't know that. That is crazy.
In the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies. Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution. After centuries of human slavery, white men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice. That includes the 300,000 Union soldiers, overwhelmingly white, who died during the Civil War. Now, am I saying that this makes white people better than anyone else? Of course not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth, and the truth is that human history is complicated. No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes of North and South America or the heinous actions under the imperialistic Muslim, Chinese, Mongol, or Japanese empires, to name just a few. Instead, we're told that slavery is a white phenomenon. And like all persistent lies, this lie spawns a bunch of other lies. On social media, I come across extraordinary depictions about how Africans lived like pharaohs before Europeans came and laid waste to their paradise. I wish any of this were true, but it's not. It's a fantasy. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other black Africans, and in many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors. Whites didn't go...
Did she just say for gin?
Gin. That's crazy.
So back then, blacks was selling blacks for alcohol. Some gin. I never knew that.
Me either.
Never.
Sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors.
And mirrors?
Whites didn't go into the interior and round up the natives. They waited on the coast for their black partners to bring them black bodies. The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors. Here's the third thing you need to know. If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today, right now. That's the lowest estimate.
As in right now, as of today? Or is this...
I think she means as in right now, as in today.
Is this true? Is this true? Could y'all let us know in the comments, is this stuff true right here?
Like, is this accurate?
Yeah, is it accurate? Like, I gotta go back and hear what she just... Wow.
Slavery is a relic of the past. You're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today, right now. That's the lowest estimate that I could find.
Wow.
Other sources say there are many more. For context, that's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States. Child soldiers, human trafficking, forced labor, these are the conditions that currently exist within the same sub-Saharan region where the transatlantic slave trade originated. African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then, and no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men. In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries. But we hear almost nothing about that. Just like we hear nothing about how slavery was universal until good people in Europe and America ended it 2 centuries ago. Why? Because our so-called leaders, black and white, wouldn't profit from it.
Wow.
Black victimhood is nothing if not profitable. It elects politicians and funds racial grievance groups. And if black Americans began to view themselves as partners in the American dream, if we embraced the patriotic spirit that holds all men are created equal, the patriotic spirit that is our real heritage, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business. And who wants that?
So what are your thoughts on this? Come on, I'm ready for a new barrage of racial hate.
Slavery was not invented by white people. It did not. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth.
Oh, are you now? My bad, I'll get to thanking y'all and apologizing in a little bit. If I'm making a video about it, you know what time it is. And seeing as the 6 distinct people I'm responding to right now combined for a total of 0 hours of research, I'm about to ether all y'all shit at the same time.
Slavery was not invented by white people.
And we already got a fucking miss. Candace spends a minute 39 seconds talking about this very point, and later on in the video goes on to say,
No one, regardless of skin color, stands guiltless. Yet today we are never told to consider the murderous Persian Empire or the cannibalism of indigenous tribes. We're told that slavery is a white phenomenon.
But considering it's a given that everyone I'm talking to probably doesn't know how history or language works, let me explain something to you real quick. When talking about slavery in the context of American politics, which is the main fucking thing PragerU deals with, no one has made the claim that slavery never existed before the tyrannical white people started it in America. But they act as though that's the claim so that conservatives have something easier to attack while tacitly justifying slavery. Because if we lived in the same house and you stole $500 from me and I said, hey, you stole $500 from me, that's a big reason why you now have more money than I do. And then you said, theft existed back in the biblical times. Theft existed before Christopher Columbus. And you were never told about it. You didn't say any of that theft. You don't have a problem with that theft. Any reasonable person would look at you like a fucking moron. Because the conversation about what happened in the Ottoman Empire does not pertain to the black-white relations in the United States.
When the intrepid explorer landed in the Bahamas, the native Taino tribe hoped that he would help them defeat their aggressive neighbors, the Caribs. The Caribs enslaved the Taino and, on occasion, served them for dinner.
Whoa.
Assuming there was any fucking research done, you couldn't have missed this. But then again, there fucking wasn't. But in true PragerU fashion, while we tacitly justify slavery, let's also tacitly justify genocide. Keep that word in your mind, by the way.
The word slave actually comes from the Slavs of Eastern Europe.
Slavic.
Millions of them, all white by the way, were captured and enslaved by Muslims in the 9th century.
This is the reason why, because I've never understood this shitty argument. Black people are complaining about slavery, but the word slave actually came from Slavs, which were white people, so you know. Cool, bucko, and the word genocide was developed during World War II, and the person who created the word used the genocide that the Ottoman Empire committed against Armenians to develop the definition of the word. Jewish and Native American people complain about genocide, but the original term was derived from the Armenians, so therefore fucking nothing, because where a word originated from does nothing to change the fact that that's an institution that black people had to suffer through in the United States, thus putting them in shitty positions for the rest of history. Oh, and the United States government did much more than just slavery to black people, so either way, it's still fucking stupid.
That makes sense.
White people were the first to formally put an end to slavery.
You do know that?
In 1833, Britain was the first country in the
I'm learning, man.
Britain was the first country in the history of the world to pass a Slavery Abolition Act. They were quickly followed by France. Then, of course, came the 13th Amendment in the United States Constitution. White men led the world in putting an end to the abhorrent practice.
No, they didn't! Many countries abolished the slave trade at different times, but Haiti was the first nation in the entire world to officially abolish slavery. Those are not white men. That was in 1804. Then came Chile. Not white men. Then Central America, which at the time consisted of Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. Not white men. Then Uruguay. Then Bolivia. Then Greece. Then Mexico. Not white men. Then slavery ended in the United Kingdom. Then Tunisia. Then France. Then Argentina, Peru, Venezuela. Look, the Dred Scott decision. Then the United States. I wasn't aware that the truth included the part where you're fucking lying.
I'm learning, man.
No, the fuck you're not. This is propaganda.
Slavery was not invented by white people. The truth is that Africans were sold into slavery by other black Africans.
Level 1, if North America fell to shit and the Canadians and Mexicans came and invaded us and then the Mexicans sold us off to some British people for slaves, would you say that Americans sold other Americans to slavery? Well, that might be a technically correct statement. You don't think of it that way, do you? You know it's more complicated than that. In the same way Canadians wouldn't think that they're selling themselves into slavery if they sold Americans. Africans didn't view it that way either. Just because we consider them one race because they're all black by today's standards, does that mean that they consider themselves one people back in the day?
And in many cases, sold for items as trivial as gin and mirrors.
Wow.
Level 2, peep the rhetorical strategy when she says they were sold for things as trivial as gin and mirrors. You can tell the rhetorical strategy worked because
I just can't believe it. I hate me. He sold the niggas for alcohol and mirrors.
Funnily enough, they didn't tell you anything else that was traded for two main reasons. One, because PragerU wants to paint the picture, look at these dumb black Africans, they just traded themselves for gin and mirrors. And two, when we look at the exhaustive list of things that different African nations received in return, it makes it look like there there was almost a profit incentive that differed the slavery that was already taking place in Africa from the transatlantic slave trade that saw increased demands from Europeans, which exploded the amount of slavery. That increased demand creating a lot of revenue for African nations, which is why they helped the Europeans. And if Europeans ran into any sort of problems while trying to obtain their slaves, they formed allyships with other African governments and funded them with weapons and means to attack other African nations in return for slaves. I thought no one stood guiltless, but you seem to be omitting a key piece of information in order to make it seem like white people stood guiltless.
The stark reality is that our lives had very little value to our ancestors.
That's not how ancestors work. A lot of slaves in America came from the west coast of Africa, but we don't know who traded us necessarily, nor if we're related to them. However, there are a few hundred years of slaves being in America for some reason, then giving birth to children who then automatically became slaves for some reason. Pretty sure they valued their lives and their offspring's lives.
If you think slavery is a relic of the past, you're wrong. There are some 700,000 slaves in Africa today. That's almost twice as many slaves as were ever brought to the United States.
Hey, let's play some math fuckery and bring up the fact that 450,000 Africans arrived in the United States without realizing, they had kids who were also slaves. Estimates putting the total amount of slaves in America coming up to around 10 million. And that count stops in 1865. Those slaves producing billions of hours of labor for no money.
African bodies are being sold today like they were sold then. And no, they are not being purchased by any country of white men. In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries.
Yeah, they exist in Africa with an estimated 7 million men, women, and children living in current-day slavery. It exists here too, with an estimated 1.1 million men, women, and children living in modern-day slavery in the United States. I thought no one stood guiltless, but you seem to be only mentioning one part of the world that has slave-like conditions still, without mentioning the literal fucking rest of the world that also has slave-like conditions. I thought you said no one stood guiltless, but then you said...
In fact, slavery, by any traditional definition, is exclusively practiced today within non-white countries.
Which is quite literally a fucking lie. We just went over it.
If we embrace the patriotic spirit that is our real heritage, then the race hustlers would soon be out of business.
Yes, the race hustlers aren't the ones who are comically wrong about literally everything having to do with history and black people and anything having to do with slavery in order to continue a culture war debate bullshit about the real stance of black people and how we really got here in order to make money from a network funded by fossil fuel billionaires in order to push a conservative worldview. No, it's the people who are literally correct. But conservatives literally have no policy position to help black people, or anybody from that matter, which is why they have to keep gaslighting you into believing things that you know to be a fact aren't actually true and they're up for debate, whilst lying and hoping that you will never look it up. And it looks like they were fucking right. If you're gonna spread bullshit propaganda, try harder. Fuck out of here.
For all the uneducated people out there who still believe that white Americans and
If you haven't watched the original creator's video, go and watch it and then come back to this. Slavery has always existed. Since humanity has existed, slavery has existed. However, chattel slavery in the transatlantic slave trade is the white man's speciality. White people invented the concept of race and racism. Race and racism played a massive factor in the transatlantic slave trade along with colonization. Yeah, technically, white people ended slavery because they started it and they were the only people that could have ended it. But let's not forget the fact that enslaved people definitely fought back at multiple times during the transatlantic slave trade. White people only ended slavery when they finished profiting from it. They didn't end it after a few years. They ended it after 500 years of rape, torture and murder. Because white people were too fickle and too stupid to do the work themselves, they made black and indigenous people do it for them. Yes, they enslaved indigenous people first, and when that didn't work out, they went over to Africa and started to kidnap the Africans, bring them over to the Americas, which is the Caribbean and North America and South America, and decided to make them work the land instead. For free. This whole Africans sold out their own people, yeah, to a certain extent, but after a very short, may I repeat, while Europeans started to steal and kidnap Africans from Africa. This lie that African kings and queens were okay with us being sold into slavery is absolute bullshit. There are copious amounts of evidence, written evidence of correspondence between African kings and queens and Europeans that were engaged in the transatlantic slave trade, from the Africans asking the Europeans to stop what they are doing and bring their people home, especially once they found out the disgusting, dirty, sadistic things that they were doing to their people. This is why I urge people to actually read real literature that comes from the transatlantic slave trade. The most amazing thing that happened during that time is that every single ounce of it, all 500 years, was documented. So before you get up on TikTok posting YouTube videos from a jucking and jiving chicken George, Uncle Ruckus ass idiot, go and actually read literature. It will help you. You're talking about people are uneducated, but you're the most uneducated person on this app to actually think that video explains anything. And this is why I went missing on this app for a while. Deleted all my videos because TikTok enjoys allowing racist ass creators like this apparent POC to spread misinformation. And it's funny that the same white man that you're pandering to is the same white man that consistently votes for people like you and me to come out of their country.
For all the uneducated people out there who still believe that white Americans and Europe...
For the uneducated person who believes what you're saying is what everybody's talking about today. You will know slavery was invented a long, long time ago. But who perpetuated it? Certainly wasn't the original, was it? No. Spanish, the Germans, the French, the Dutch, the South Africans, the Americans, the British. Perpetuated it for the last 300 years. So maybe have a look into that, bro. Because it's not about who invented it. It's about who carried on and lived a life of luxury under that system that, funnily enough, we're still under today. Just, everybody's been educated to believe that it's a free world when it's not.
Followed by France, who in 1848 abolished slavery in her many colonies.
I like how they're just saying, oh, that country abolished slavery without actually going into it. Okay, France didn't just abolish it for its many colonies. They fought fucking back. And I'm going to specifically talk about Haiti here and the fact that Haiti is still paying France today for their freedom of slavery. Because Napoleon had a Napoleon complex and got pissy when Toussaint Louverture. So Toussaint Louverture was the general of Haiti. He was originally born a slave, and he actually taught himself how to read, from what I remember, and really rose up through the rankings and became General Toussaint Louverture. And France was one of the worst European countries when it came to slavery and the way they did it. And that's also what led to their downfall. Because see, in America, and I'm not trying to say one's better than the other, but I don't know how to actually phrase it, but in America, we kept slaves. There's even breeding plantations that we weren't taught about, but that happened. And mainly we had generations of slaves. France did not do that. France worked them to death, to unaliving, and would just bring more in. They didn't have children slaves because France would just keep bringing slaves from Africa to replace the ones who died. I don't know how much of this will get banned from TikTok, but there was a couple of downfalls with that, because with that, these were true African warriors. They were connected with their gods. They were connected with their culture. They weren't born as slaves. They were born well cared, well fed, nourished. They had muscles. They knew how to fight. And the connection with their gods came in very important on the first night of the revolution, when they did a voodoo ritual to invoke Oshun, I don't want to get this wrong on the internet, but it was I think Oshun was a war goddess. But that's one of the main things, is that in America, the slaves were taught the Christian Bible, and the Christian Bible says beat your slave, yada, 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 all that bad shit. They didn't have all that, and they invoked their gods. And the one story that it still gets me to this day, is this nameless man. No, we don't know his name, but he believed in it so much, in his gods, and he threw himself in front of a cannon, on top of it. And that one single mark led to everyone else being able to like really get to the point of that one battle. But France didn't just abolish slavery. Haiti fought for it, and now Haiti is paying France billions. They still owe billions with inflation. It's fucked up. It's fucked up.
So this is all I got from this video. So the Chinese man started from all the uneducated people out there, right? Who still believe that white people and Europeans are responsible for all the slavery in the world. And then he decided to like put a crash course, right? For us to watch and see. And then the crash course was from Candace Owen. And actually, they lost me when they started that Columbus discovered America. And I was like, how did he discover it when there were people already there? So let's talk about chattel slavery and the Atlantic slavery, right? I mean, how do they wake up to say that Americans were the first to abolish slavery? Excuse you, like, where did you read that? Because I do not understand it. They were not. And also, let's talk about, let me even say that. Did that really, when they said they abolished slavery, did that really abolish slavery? No, they did not abolish slavery. Slavery was still, in fact, as I speak to you right now, slavery is still going on in an underground way. And if you think it's a lie, I don't know, maybe we have to like, set aside this thing and talk about it. Slavery never stopped. It's evolved and it is still very much alive. And a Chinese man, like a Chinese American man, is looking for a way to shade, because that is it. He is trying to shade black people for saying that, that always said that, like Americans are not the ones that started slavery, right? And it is really amazing how all these people really wake up and they want to gaslight black people, or they just want to tell you to forget about slavery. It's been a long time it's happened. Get over it and all that. Are you okay? Slavery has always existed since the humanity started and all that. We know. But the shadow slavery and the Atlantic slavery, who started it? Who actually started it? And it's really crazy how marginalized group always come to act like the white savior, or act like, how do I say that? Acts like black people are their problems and all that. When did white people ended slavery? They ended slavery when they already finished profiting from it. So what was the essence of stopping it? That was after they already brought people over, tortured people, made people to suffer, and rape and pee them and the rest of it. And somebody is very stupid to come here to gaslight himself. I don't know, really. I really don't know where to start. I don't know where to it's crazy how people are forgetting that people were on their own. They wake up and decided to kidnap them and bring them over, or brought them over to do some horrible things to them. And somebody is looking for a way to justify what they did, or trying to tell you that, because what he's trying to tell us is that it was not Americans or Europeans that started it first. It's been there, it has been existing. So you all should stop talking about it okay, now he is actually talking like a white person, because that is how, for him to show us this video, that is what he's trying to tell us. You all stop, you all uneducated people, stop talking about it. Americans were not the ones that started it. Europeans were not the ones that started it. It was your ancestors that started it, and the rest of it. Whose ancestors? The ones you all put gun in their heads and all that to take people away, or to exchange one or two things from them before they give you people and all that? Was it was it willingly, or you all put guns in their head and tell them like you are gonna give us this person and the rest of it? Oh my God. Before people wake up to come and call people uneducated, right? I want you to make sure that you are coming here well informed, because it does not make any sense coming uninformed or not being mentally okay or not mentally smart to talk about some certain things, especially when it comes to Black community. And Black people, Black people are not asking you all to come and speak on their behalf. Stop coming to gaslight them. Stop coming to act ignorant of yourself. Enough of all this BS and bullshit. Black people aren't taking it anymore. So if you are looking for where to, you can go over and talk about your Asian slavery or Chinese, whatever you want to call it. Go talk about Chinese, go talk about whatever Asians you want to talk about, but leave Black people out of your effing mouth. You get that right? And for Candice Owen, do I give a shit? I don't give a shit about that. This is where I am going to draw the cut and see you all in my next video. Bye for now.